You know, just by watching this right now, you've kicked off a whole series of circuits in your brain. Circuits that, believe it or not, took humanity thousands of years to build. We're talking about the incredible neural machinery required for reading. So that kind of begs the question, right? We all think of speaking as something we're just born to do. It's totally natural. So it would make sense that reading, which is just written down speech, would be natural too. But is it, really? Well, the science on this has a pretty shocking answer. Nope, not even close. It turns out our brains are not, in any way, naturally wired to read. It's a skill we had to literally invent from scratch. Yeah, that's right. Unlike seeing or talking, reading is a human invention. And on the grand evolutionary timeline, it's so new that our brains haven't had time to carve out a dedicated, built-in reading center. So how in the world do we even do it? It turns out our brains pull off this incredible trick. They create something that scientists call a reading brain network. Now, this isn't a new piece of brain hardware. Instead, the brain just gets creative and co-ops, or kind of hijacks, parts that were already there for other stuff, like vision and sound and language. It's an amazing example of just how flexible our brains are. So building this network is like a beautiful three-step dance inside your head. First, your eyes see a symbol. That's the visual cortex doing its thing. Then your brain has to connect that shape to a sound, which happens in the auditory cortex. And finally, your language centers jump in and give that sound a meaning. It happens so fast, you don't even notice. And of course, this whole process was only possible because we invented writing in the first place. That journey started way back, around 3300 BC, with things like Sumerian cuneiform and Egyptian hieroglyphics. Over thousands of years, those early pictures evolved and got more and more sophisticated, eventually becoming the letters we're all looking at right now. But get this, the story gets even wilder. It turns out that the language you read actually changes the physical wiring in your brain. That's right, different writing systems literally build different kinds of neural roads. Just think about the two main types. You have alphabetic languages, like English, which are all about sound. Each letter represents a little piece of a word's sound. But then you have logographic languages, like Chinese, which are super visual. Each complex character can be a whole word or idea, so it relies way more on visual memory. And this isn't just theory. A really incredible medical case gave scientists a perfect window into how these separate circuits work. It's a story that involves a patient who spoke two very different languages, a sudden stroke, and a discovery that left doctors absolutely stunned. Okay, so this patient was fluent in both English and Chinese. He had a stroke that unfortunately damaged the specific parts of his brain that handled the visual logographic processing for Chinese. And when that happened, he couldn't read Chinese anymore. But, and this is the amazing part, his ability to read alphabetic English was totally fine. It was solid proof the two languages had built completely separate reading highways inside the very same brain. And the brain-shaping power of reading goes even deeper, all the way to our emotions. Reading actually builds empathy. When you really get lost in a good book and you read about a character's pain or joy, your brain lights up the same exact areas as if you were feeling those things yourself. You literally start to feel what the character is feeling. So all of this brings us right to our doorstep, to today. Our brains are still adapting, and right now they're facing a brand new fork in the road. The huge difference between reading on a screen and what we call deep reading, in a book. Think about it. Deep reading, the kind you do with a physical book, trains your brain for focus, for critical thinking. But screen reading, well, that often trains our brains for something else. Just scrolling, skimming, and being constantly interrupted by notifications and links. We end up scanning for keywords instead of really understanding, which can actually make us more likely to fall for misinformation. And why is this such a big deal? Because being able to slow down, think critically, and really analyze what you're reading isn't just a nice-to-have skill for school, it is absolutely fundamental to being an informed citizen in a democracy. And some of the research is starting to paint a pretty stark picture. This chart, for example, shows findings that point to a troubling connection. The more time young kids spend on digital devices, the more likely they are to have challenges with academic performance down the road. Neurologically, what's happening is that a young brain that gets used to constant, high-speed stimulation from screens starts to expect it all the time. As one expert puts it, that brain starts craving faster and faster rewards. So when those kids finally go offline and into the real, slower-paced world, they just feel bored.
So, where does that leave us? Is it all doom and gloom in our digital world? Absolutely not. The good news is we have a say in this. We can consciously choose how we want to shape our own brains and the brains of the next generation by cultivating what's called a reading life.
And the solution isn't some complicated new app or tech gadget. I just love how the source material describes it. It calls the antidote the simplest, most beautiful one, and that is to just have our kids and ourselves immersed in reading, to have a real reading life. So how do we do it? It really comes down to the basics. For parents and teachers, it means we have to model that love of reading ourselves. We have to read to our kids, we have to surround them with amazing books, we have to make reading a joyful, essential part of their everyday lives. Because in the end, the power of deep reading goes to the very core of our humanity. As we've seen, it literally changes our brains, it builds our capacity for empathy, it shapes who we become. And by changing ourselves one book at a time, we really can help build a better future for everyone. Remember, reading isn't just a passive hobby. It is the active, incredible process of building your own mind. And so that leaves all of us with a really important question. In this world full of screens, how will we choose to shape our brain?
Thanks for watching. Like, comments, and share.